Good morning. It is my privilege to welcome you to the Department of Justice in our historic Great Hall. We are here today to discuss the importance of religious liberty in American life, a liberty that is central to our history as a nation, that is guaranteed by our Constitution, and that is rightly called our first freedom. My name is Jesse Panuccio, and I serve as the Acting Associate Attorney General of the United States. We are honored to be joined on this stage this morning by the Department's top leadership and the heads of department components that handle many religious liberty issues. Please join me in welcoming the Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions. The Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Rod Rosenstein. The Assistant Attorney General for the Office of Legal Policy, Beth Williams. And the Acting Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division, John Gore. At this time, please rise to honor our country and our flag with the singing of the national anthem by Ms. Dorothy Williams from the Civil Rights Division. Dorothy, thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets reeled clear, the buzz bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free, on the home of the
Wow, thank you, Dorothy, for sharing your wonderful voice with us. What a moving and stirring rendition of our national anthem. I've heard her do that several times now, and it is just better every single time, so thank you very much. The last line of the national anthem describes the United States as the land of the free. There are many freedoms to which that line refers, but from the very first days of the American experiment, the core of our national character has been a yearning for and a jealous guardianship of religious liberty. Religious liberty is our first freedom indeed. Many would say that that moniker attaches because of the first words of the First Amendment are that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. But of course, the American yearning for religious freedom long predates the ratification of the First Amendment. We all know, for example, the story of the Puritans fleeing the religious persecution of King James. Reflecting this historical commitment, the Constitution itself, ratified 3 years before the First Amendment, includes a guarantee of religious liberty. dictating that no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any public trust, office or public trust under the United States. The Philadelphia Convention, at which the unamended Constitution was drafted, featured fierce debates about most of the document's provisions, but the ban on religious oaths was, according to Luther Martin's notes, adopted by a great majority of the convention and without much debate. A few anti-federalists cited this provision as an argument against ratification, contending that the lack of an oath would fail to guarantee honorable public servants. At the same time, however, the anti-federalist camp demanded the broader and more explicit religious protections eventually ratified in the First Amendment. All of this is to say that religious liberty, its meaning, its contours, its application, has always been a central feature of American life, and an important consideration as we have ordered our civic and governmental affairs. And yet, as with all of our freedoms, its scope has been hotly debated, and its promise has not always been kept. The history of religious liberty is, like its sister freedoms, one of a continued march toward a more perfect union. The struggle for and debate surrounding religious freedom persists in our own time. Even as we have enshrined new guarantees, such as the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993 and the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act of 2000, our society continues to grapple with discrimination against religion. For our part, the Department of Justice is committed to ensuring the laws protecting religious freedom are fully and fairly applied across the nation. Responding to the President's executive order that it shall be the policy of the executive branch to vigorously enforce federal law's robust protections for religious freedom, the Attorney General has provided 20 principles that must guide all of the Department's actions when dealing with issues that touch upon religion. This leadership is making a difference every day at the Department. The Office of the Associate Attorney General oversees or works with several components that are putting the Attorney General's guidance into practice. The Civil Rights Division, for example, has redoubled its enforcement efforts against religious discrimination. In June, the division announced its Place to Worship initiative, which focuses on RLUIPA violations. For its part, the Civil Division carefully considers the Attorney General's guidance in confronting religious liberty claims made against the United States, and it is currently defending federal agencies in suits challenging measures designed to accommodate religious freedom and expression. Even the Tax Division is working to protect religious liberty. Just last week, the division filed a reply brief in a Seventh Circuit case in which the Department of Justice is defending the constitutionality of what's known as the parsonage allowance in the Internal Revenue Code. Under this decades-old law, the value of housing provided to clergy is not considered gross income for income tax purposes. The law also provides that a housing stipend provided to clergy is not considered gross income. And plaintiffs in the case have argued that this allowance violates the Establishment Clause. But as we point out in our briefs, the law, among other reasons, is constitutional because it advances, rather than offends, Establishment Clause principles. It avoids government discrimination among religious sects by refusing to have tax status turn on how a particular religion organizes its internal affairs. Our brief contends that this long-standing statute avoids government entanglement in and permissibly accommodates religion. Our nation has a long history of accommodating religious freedom, of making a space for people of all faiths, so that they may pursue their own private ends while also participating fully in public life. Indeed, the founders gave us one example of such an accommodation right at the very moment of ratification in 1788, even before the First Amendment was adopted. There is a great retelling of the event in a 2012 commentary article by Michael Schwartz, and I borrow from his account. The incident occurred on July 22nd, 1788. Actually, it was a non-incident, for on that date, the New York Federalists, having just achieved ratification and eager to outshine Philadelphia in a celebratory and delayed July 4th processional, postponed the parade by one day to avoid a Jewish holiday and thereby permit Jewish families in New York to participate. A contemporary letter contends that it was, quote, a great compliment paid to the Jews, and Schwartz, in his 2012 article, explains that to hold all of the preparations and logistics in abeyance for even 24 hours while the ratification remained deadlocked must have represented a major hardship to and gamble by the New York Federalists. And all of that for a small population of Jewish residents in New York. Schwartz contends as follows. The decision to postpone the procession on their account makes clear that whatever the controversies delaying New York's ratification of the Constitution, a modern spirit of tolerance and fellow feeling had taken hold even before New York finally acceded. Indeed, it doesn't seem a stretch to say that the day's postponement is itself a powerful testimony to the success of the revolution, even before the United States government took form. We continue today to strive to advance that modern spirit of tolerance and fellow feeling, to respect and accommodate religious freedom and celebrate its importance in our country. That's what today's program is all about. The distinguished speakers and panelists here today will address the importance of religious liberty developments from a variety of perspectives. You will hear from each of the guests here on stage about their perspective and about the efforts of the Department of Justice in this area. You will also hear today from leading scholars about how Congress and the courts are shaping religious liberty doctrine. Representatives of religious organizations and individuals of faith will also join us to discuss the place of religious liberty in their own lives and their own communities. And we will close with a congressional perspective from Senator Lankford. This is an important event for the Department of Justice, and we are honored that all of these guests and each and every one of you have joined us today. We are also very thankful for the department employees who made this event a reality. Rachel Tucker in the Office of the Attorney General, Rachel Parker, Jeff Hall, and Reed Rubenstein in the Office of the Associate Attorney General, Jenny Lichter in the Office of Legal Policy, and Eric Treen in the Office of in the Civil Rights Division. With that, I now have the pleasure of welcoming to the podium Assistant Attorney General Beth Williams. AAG Williams joined the department in August of last year after a unanimous confirmation by the United States Senate. I have known Beth a long time. She was one of the first people to introduce herself to me when I entered law school, and ever since I have known her to be an amazing lawyer and a true friend. We are so fortunate to have her at the department, and we are especially grateful to have her here this morning because she has had to pull herself away from work on a certain pending judicial nomination. Indeed, her office is doing incredible work in shepherding through confirmation of dozens of well-qualified nominees to the federal bench. But her office also plays an important role in legal policy related to religious liberty. Please join me in welcoming Assistant Attorney General Beth Williams.
Thank you, Jesse, for that kind introduction. It is wonderful to be working in the Department of Justice, and especially with a dear friend. My office is indeed busy at the moment, but I would not miss the opportunity to be here this morning for such an important event. Thank you to all of you for joining us today to discuss religious freedom, our first freedom, and why it matters. I am very glad to be with you. Today's event has grown out of the Attorney General's passion and leadership. He has taken to heart the President's message that protecting and promoting religious liberty is a priority. Indeed, it is the priority on which our country was founded. The Attorney General brings to this issue his own personal commitment too. Under his leadership, the Department of Justice has been a strong voice in the fight for religious freedom for all Americans. The department has vigorously prosecuted hate crimes directed at people of faith, including Muslims, Jews, and Christians, and has taken efforts to protect people of faith from unjust discrimination. Last fall, the Attorney General issued legal guidance for all executive departments and agencies on protections for religious liberty under federal law. This document lays out 20 principles that identify the foundational tenets of religious liberty law and offers guidance to the executive branch on how to make reasonable accommodations for religious observance. My office was proud to assist the Attorney General in crafting the memorandum, and we are committed to continuing to assist with its implementation. The first principle in the document reminds us that religious freedom is enshrined in our Constitution and protected by law. We are fortunate to live in a country where the freedom to practice one's religion is, as the Attorney General has said, not a mere policy preference to be traded against other policy preferences. It is a fundamental right. The Attorney General has explained that religious liberty is not merely a right to personal religious beliefs or even to worship in a sacred place. It also encompasses religious observance and practice. Except in the narrowest circumstances, no one should be forced to choose between living out his or her faith and complying with the law. The Attorney General's guidance on religious liberty is one of the department's signature achievements in the first year of this administration. If you have not read it, I encourage you to do so. It is included in your registration packet. And now I am delighted to introduce the Attorney General, whose bravery and vision bring us here this morning. Attorney General Sessions is a dedicated and distinguished public servant with 40 years of service to this country. After serving as a federal prosecutor for 14 years, 12 of those as the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Alabama, he also served as the Attorney General of Alabama. For 20 years, he represented his state in the United States Senate. He was confirmed as the 84th Attorney General of the United States last February. Attorney General Sessions has worked tirelessly throughout his career to defend and uphold the principles on which this country was founded, including the principle that all people have the right to practice their faith freely. He is also personally a man of deep faith. Because of that, he recognizes and appreciates the sincerely held religious beliefs that so many Americans hold. His core values and his strong belief in God continue to define him today. We are very grateful for his leadership. Please join me in welcoming Attorney General Sessions.
Thank you. Thank you, Beth. It's and good to be with all of you. And thank you for your leadership at Legal Policy. We do have a lot of things going on there. I want to thank Acting Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and our Acting Associate Attorney General Jesse Panuccio for their leadership. Jesse, thank you also for your good remarks and thoughtful remarks this morning. Thank you to Dorothy Williams from the Civil Rights Division for sharing your voice with us today. Thank you, Archbishop Kurtz, my good friend Senator Lankford, who is really a thoughtful contributor to these important issues in the Senate, as well as our panelists, Acting Assistant Attorney General John Gore, Kerry Kupak, Derek Max, Professor McConnell, Ozma Udin, Shai Dvorsky, Emily Kao, and of course, Jack Phillips. So I want to thank all of you and thank for your courage, insight, and the ability to articulate the values and importance of religious freedom. Let's be frank. A dangerous movement, undetected by many, but real, is now challenging and eroding a great tradition of religious freedom. There can be no doubt. It's no little matter. It must be confronted intellectually and politically and defeated. This past election, and much that has flowed from it, gives us a rare opportunity to arrest these trends and to confront them. Such a reversal will not just be done with electoral victories, however, but by intellectual victories. We've gotten to the point where courts have held that morality cannot be a basis for law, where ministers are fearful to affirm, as they understand it, Holy Writ from the pulpit, and where one group can actively target religious groups by labeling them hate groups. This President and this Department of Justice are determined to protect and advance our magnificent heritage of freedom of religion. Freedom of religion is indeed our first freedom, being the first listed right in the First Amendment. This has been a core American principle from the beginning. It is one of the reasons this country was settled in the first place. The promise of freedom of conscience brought the Pilgrims to Plymouth, the Catholics to Maryland, the Quakers to Pennsylvania, Scott Presbyterians to the Middle Colonies, Roger Williams to Rhode Island. Each of these groups and others knew what it was like to be hated, persecuted, outnumbered, and discriminated against. Each one knew what it was like to have a majority try to force them to deny their natural right to practice the faith they held dear. Our founders gave religious expression a double protection in the First Amendment. Not only do we possess the freedom to exercise our religious beliefs, we also enjoy the freedom of speech. Our founders' understanding of and commitment to religious freedom was truly brilliant. It was historic, really. It arose in large part from the principles delineated in the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom and its effective, brilliant advocates, Madison and Jefferson. These guys were ferocious. This weekend, I was reading Gary Wills's fabulous book, Head and Heart, in which he quotes extensively from Jefferson's Statute for Religious Freedom in Virginia. I commend all of it to you, but one line stood out in particular to me, quote, that Almighty God hath created the mind free and manifested his supreme will that free it shall remain by making it altogether insusceptible of restraint. And he talked about that from a religious point of view. Of course, this is entirely consistent with other quotes of Jefferson, one of which I recall, chiseled in the walls of the Jefferson Memorial, for I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. So this is what they believed. They believed people's religion was between them and God and articulated it that way, and that no state, no temporal power has the power and ability and moral authority to control that thought. They clearly recognized an individual's relationship with God is a natural right. They explicitly said it precedes the existence of the state and is not subject to the state's control. These concepts were placed in our Constitution and laws and formed really a national consensus that has greatly militated against religious hostility and violence that so many places in the world have seen, and has helped us to this day to be one of the world's most diverse religious people. Actually, of the modern nations, one of the most religious, still to this day. There can be no doubt that we are stronger as a nation because of the contribution of religious people. Every day across America, they feed the hungry, shelter the homeless, educate our young people, care for the sick. They do so not because the government tells them to, but because they want to. They do these things because of their faith. I can assure you that people in Washington have no idea the extent to which our religious community is with the American people in times of birth, death, marriage, divorce, and those kind of situations that are so impactful to human beings. And I believe we need to respect that and affirm it wherever possible. So this faith that Americans adhere to has something the state can never provide. This faith provides meaning and purpose and joy in life. But in recent years, the cultural climate in this country and in the West more generally has become less hospitable to people of faith. Many Americans have felt that their freedom to practice their faith has been under attack, and it's easy to see why. We've seen nuns ordered to buy contraceptives. We've seen United States senators ask judicial and executive branch nominees about their dogma, even though the Constitution explicitly prohibits a religious test for public office. We've all seen the ordeal faced so bravely by Jack Phillips. Americans from a wide variety of backgrounds are concerned about what this changing cultural climate means for the future of religious liberty in our country. President Trump heard the concern. I believe this unease among the American people is one reason he was elected. In substance, he said he respected people of faith and he promised to protect them in the free exercise of that faith. He declared, we would say, Merry Christmas again. And that was a message that went beyond, of course, just any sectarian comment. The Department of Justice is active. We've settled 24 civil cases with 90 plaintiffs regarding the previous administration's wrong application of the contraception mandate to objecting religious employers. Last month, a district court in Colorado issued a permanent injunction in the case involving the Little Sisters of the Poor, a group of nuns who serve the elderly poor. This is a permanent injunction and a major victory for the Little Sisters of the Poor and for religious freedom. The government has no business telling the Little Sisters that they must provide an insurance policy that violates their sincere religious beliefs. And since day one, this administration has been delivering. Soon after taking office, the President directed me, the Department of Justice, to issue explicit legal guidance for all executive agencies on how to apply the religious liberty protections in federal law. Our team embraced that challenge. I got to say, our team was enthusiastic about that challenge. We had some great young people and others too with experience in these matters that went to work. I issued that guidance in October, and it lays out 20 fundamental principles for the executive branch to follow. Those include the principle that free exercise means a right to act or abstain from action. They include the principle that government shouldn't impugn one's motives or beliefs. We don't give up our rights when we go to work, start a business, talk about politics, or interact with the government. We don't give up our rights when we assemble or join together. We have religious freedom as individuals and as groups. In short, we have not only the freedom to worship, but the right to exercise our faith. The Constitution's protections don't end at the parish parking lot, nor can our freedoms be confined to our basements. Under this administration, the federal government is not just reacting to these challenges. We are actively seeking, carefully, thoughtfully, lawfully, to accommodate people of faith. Religious Americans are no longer an afterthought. We will take potential burdens on one's conscience into consideration before we issue regulations or policies. And this Department of Justice is going to court across America to defend the rights of people of faith. First of all, we are aggressively and appropriately enforcing our civil rights laws, our hate crimes laws, and laws protecting churches and faith groups. Since January of 17, we've obtained 11 indictments and 7 convictions in cases involving arson or other attacks or threats against houses of worship. Our Civil Rights Division has also obtained 12 indictments in other attacks or threats against people because of their religion. And we're not slowing down. 3 weeks ago, we obtained a jury verdict against a man who set a fire to a mosque in Texas and sentenced a man from Missouri for threatening to kill members of a mosque. In addition to protecting the safety of people of faith, we're also protecting them against unjust discrimination. In January, we filed a brief in a Montana court to defend parents who claim that the state barred their children who were attending private schools from a private school scholarship program because they attended a religious private school. We filed a amicus brief on behalf of the Archdiocese in Washington, D.C., which was refused advertising space for having a religious message, including, I guess, joy to the world or Merry Christmas. What could they have said that would have offended people that barred them from being able to run such a message? And of course, we're proud to file a brief in support of Jack Phillips. We're taking steps to become even more effective. In June, I announced the Place of Worship Initiative. Under this initiative, the department is holding public events across America and improving training for our federal prosecutors about legal protections for houses of worship. When I was in the Senate, we passed a law called the Religious Land Use and Institutional Persons Act, RLUIPA. That's easier to say than the title. But under RLUIPA, the Department of Justice can file a civil action in court when religious groups are discriminated against in zoning laws. Under my tenure, we have not hesitated to use this tool when appropriate. In June, we filed suit against a town in New Jersey that had refused over and over again for 8 years to let an Orthodox Jewish congregation buy land for a synagogue. And just last week, we filed a brief in federal court supporting the case of a Hindu temple in Maryland that claimed to have suffered discrimination in its attempts to purchase land. We're going to keep going to court, and I believe we're going to keep winning. Today, I am announcing our next step, the Religious Liberty Task Force, to be co-chaired by the Associate Attorney General, Jesse, and the Assistant Attorney General for Office of Legal Policy, Beth. The task force will help the department fully implement our religious liberty guidance by ensuring that all Justice Department components, and we got a lot of components around the country, are upholding that guidance in the cases they bring and defend, the arguments they make in court, the policies and regulations they adopt, and how we conduct our operations. That includes making sure our employees know their duties to accommodate people of faith. And as the people in this room know, you have to practice what you preach. So we're going to remain in contact with religious groups across America to ensure that their rights are being protected. We have been holding listening sessions and will continue to host them in the coming weeks. This administration is animated by that same American view that has led us for 242 years, that every American has a right to believe and worship and exercise their faith in the public square. This approach has served this country well. We are perhaps the most religiously developed nation in the world and can take pride in respecting all people as they fully exercise their beliefs. It is clear these policies have furthered peace, prosperity, freedom, lawfulness, and charity. As our nation grows older, we must not let it depart from this noble tradition. So, now I have the pleasure of introducing a great American and religious leader, Archbishop Joseph Kurtz, someone who is an expert on these matters. Archbishop Kurtz was ordained a priest of the Diocese of Allentown in 1972. Over the next 2 decades, he served in a variety of capacities in the diocese, including teaching at 2 seminaries. He was named Monsignor in 1986 and appointed a pastor in 1988. In 1999, Pope John Paul II appointed him Bishop of Knoxville, and in 2007, Pope Benedict XVI appointed him Archbishop of Louisville, where he now leads the oldest inland diocese in the United States and the oldest archdiocese west of the Appalachians. In 2010, he was elected Vice President of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and then served as President from 2013 to 2016. In 2017, he was elected Chairman of the Conference Committee for Religious Liberty. Please join me in welcoming Archbishop Joseph Kurtz.
Attorney General Sessions, thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this event. You know, I'm really encouraged to see the Department of Justice putting so much energy into protecting religious freedom, including, Attorney General, your drafting and promotion of the Religious Liberty Guidance. thank you for that. And so it's a privilege to be with you. Dear friends, I represent the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And in the statement of the Bishops' Conference on religious freedom, it was entitled, "Our First, Most Precious and Cherished Liberty." It begins this way: "We are Catholics, we are Americans, we are proud to be both." I want to lay out some reasons why we who are Catholic and American want to promote our first freedom, that is religious freedom. There are three. First of all, I'd like to talk about the fact that we are called by Jesus Christ to inspire a culture. Secondly, because religious freedom gives us a space to serve. And then thirdly, because we can solve social problems better when all of us work together to find a solution. So first of all, let me say a few words about inspiring a culture. Some words about the Catholic teaching and the kind of political culture that we desire. The social teaching of the Catholic Church offers a vision to all Americans of goodwill, whether they are Christians or not. The Church teaches that religious liberty is rooted in the dignity of the human person. The human person has dignity because each is created in the image of God, and this means in part that each of us has the capacity to seek the truth about God. As Americans, we intuitively understand that individuals should be free in accordance with what they believe to be true, that is, in accordance with their conscience. And so we want political culture to respect that freedom as much as possible. I think that we see in some of our challenges to religious freedom that when we lose respect for the search for truth, our politics degenerates into power seeking for the purpose of imposing one's will on others. When this happens, we truly are losing respect for basic human dignity. The Church envisions politics as service to truth-seeking. I think most of us want to live in a country with that kind of politics. You see, people of faith are called to inspire a culture. When we talk about human dignity and seeking the truth, we're talking about a vision of human flourishing. We want to propose this vision to our culture, and we want to be able to enjoy an encounter and, yes, a dialogue with people of other faiths about our different visions and how together we can promote human flourishing. It's both our faith conviction and also our civic duty that calls us as a church to contribute to the common good and to witness to that faith by serving others without giving up the integrity of our faith convictions. This sacred duty is a legacy that faith leaders in America, from Archbishop John Carroll to the present, have handed on to us. I recall that in 2015, during Pope Francis's visit to the United States, and specifically his visit to the White House, he spoke of religious freedom, and I quote, as one of America's most precious possessions. Our Holy Father goes on to urge us, and again I quote, to be vigilant, precisely as good citizens, to preserve and defend that freedom from everything that would threaten or compromise it. To be with Pope Francis at the White House and then later at Congress was certainly an emotional time, but even more so when he visited the Little Sisters of the Poor and when he served lunch at Catholic Charities in Washington, D.C. My being with Pope Francis for those 6 days left me with a deep sense of responsibility, a responsibility to help our church and all people of faith to serve as God asks of us. Now, for sure, the church serves in a multitude of areas: education, health care, child welfare services, migration and refugee services. And at the heart of all of these efforts, there is a vision that we uphold, a vision of the human person and dignity, a vision of the family, a vision of a nation that serves the common good. And we propose this vision with passion for the good of individuals and for the good of our nation. In many ways, religious freedom means that we are free to propose this vision and that we can engage in a free exchange of ideas with others about how people can flourish in our country. Secondly, the freedom to serve. In our work for religious freedom, we are asking for the space to serve with integrity. The space to serve with integrity. The HHS mandate alarmed the United States bishops so greatly because it would have required people of faith, such as the Little Sisters of the Poor, to make an impossible choice between either paying extraordinary fines to the federal government or violating the very faith that motivates them to serve the poor. Thanks to the regulations of this administration, issued this past October, for which we're very grateful, the contraceptive mandate's heavy fines no longer loom over us as they did before, but threats to our freedom to serve continue. One example. One of the biggest concerns is our ability of our child welfare providers to continue to be able to place children with foster and adoptive families consistent with our teaching. You know, there are over 400,000 children in our foster care system and 100,000 young people waiting to be adopted. The opioid crisis is putting a strain on the foster care system. Yet as a real crisis emerges, faith-based child welfare providers are being targeted for closure because of their religious convictions about the family. The number of children in need is going up, yet the places like Illinois, Massachusetts, San Francisco, here in D.C., service providers who have a track record of excellence in recruiting and assisting foster families have been shut down. Recently, the ACLU sued the state of Michigan because Michigan has a law protecting the conscience rights of adoption and foster care providers. And Catholic Social Services in Philadelphia is fighting to continue to serve after a city recently suspended its contract with this long-standing, award-winning foster care provider. You see, faith-based organizations have a crucial role to play in adoption and foster care. They are often excelling at recruiting families to serve as foster parents because they can go directly into churches and invite people who share their faith to serve in this way. In fact, I'm told in Arkansas, one organization called The Call is responsible for recruiting half of the foster families in that state. We need to focus on children first, those who need loving homes. Now is not the time to limit agencies that are able to serve children. And so intolerance for religious views has real consequences as vulnerable children suffer the most. You know, in all of our service ministries, education, health care, and others, we're impelled by our faith. For example, the Catholic commitment to education is rooted in our belief that Jesus Christ is the Word of God made flesh. The Church has continued the healing ministry of Jesus by building health care institutions. And our commitment to adoption and foster care is really a direct response to our Lord's command to care for the orphan. When activists try to force Christian ministries into violating their consciences, They force Christians into a bind. You see, service is in our DNA, but so is the recognition of dignity of each and every human person. We cannot reject our commitments to service, nor can we turn away from our commitment to the truth about the human person. So we must fight for religious freedom, that we can serve and serve with integrity. And the third and the final area that I'd like to briefly address is the importance of our partnering with the government. You know, there are some who claim that faith-based organizations must give up our convictions when we partner with the government to provide much-needed social services. But our country is much richer when we have public-private partnerships that work well. Faith-based organizations are some of the most trusted groups within our local communities. They often have very deep roots. To exclude a faith-based group from serving the public, whether it's feeding the hungry, sheltering the homeless, helping migrant and refugees, assisting people affected by the opioid crisis to find a road to recovery, excluding them makes no sense in a pluralistic society like ours. And so we should look to have all hands on deck when it comes to tackling the greatest needs of our day. In conclusion, we are very grateful for all the work of service done by people of faith every day in our country and around the world. We're committed to preserving the freedom to serve others, and for these reasons and for many more, religious freedom is vital to the common good of our country. I want to thank you for your efforts to promote and defend this, our first, most cherished liberty. Thank you.